Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by everybody. That's because this is episode 40. And it feels like the right moment to bring this season of the podcast to a close. Since I launched the show 6 months ago, Strategy Shorts has connected me with the most remarkable people. And some have gone on to become great friends of mine. And you know what? We've covered a lot of ground. My inbox has been filling up with requests for guest spots, and the show itself has reached thousands and thousands of people across channels. I've been amazed by the conversations I've had. We've had strategy leaders like Julian, Callum and Pollard, who are supporting thousands of strategists around the world. We've spoken to Forbes 30 under 30 list makers like Christian Brown of Glue. He's helping creators turn their passion into careers. We've met brand specialists like Sam Winsbury and William Choi. They're helping business owners achieve extraordinary levels of reach. We've explored empathy-inspired marketing with Kennan, and we've simplified how to create breakthrough content with Daniel Murray, Mark Jung, and Dain Walker, who literally have a combined audience of millions. And we've explored identity and conscious leadership with guests like Matthew Wood and Justin Foster. It's been a wild ride. And I want to say a massive thank you to all my guests. You've helped bring this show to life, and your generous spirit and practical wisdom have literally helped thousands of people who've connected with the show. So what's next? Production is going to continue in the background, but the show itself is shifting its focus toward organisational culture, leadership, and team building. With that comes a short break in the release schedule, but in a few weeks, I'll be back with new guests, a new format, and a whole bunch of practical things for people to take away and try. I'm so excited to share the next chapter with you as soon as possible. But let's get back to today's episode. I asked each of my guests to share one top takeaway for the audience to action as soon as their episode finished. This epilogue episode brings them all together in one place. So as far as Strategy Shorts is concerned, this is a long episode. So sit back and relax with a cuppa, or use the timestamps and episode titles in the show notes to jump around the episode. I've also linked the episodes themselves so you can dive back into the details if you want to. I'll be seeing you again soon, but for now, let's dive in.
The most important part is the consumer problem. You need to get to a very clear consumer problem. Often that's where it's lacking. That's the number one place I see for most strategists. They're struggling. They'll write it as a business problem, like, the audience is not aware of The Economist. That's not what you're doing. The product is the solution. It's not the problem. So that's really important that you write a problem that's happening in their lives and how the product can solve that. But you need to go back. You need to work out, okay, well, what is this solving for, and work out what's the bigger problem there. And things like, we don't have time to discuss it now, but the benefit ladder will help you get there as well. That might be another episode in the future.
I think shifting your mindset that content for you is everything for your audience. Stop writing a personal journal. That's not how algorithms work. If you want a personal journal, you can write that, but you're just not going to you might get interest, or you might not, but you should write things that are everything for your audience. And knowing your audience deeply comes from consuming a lot of content. Great content comes from consuming great content.
There's a lot, but I would really think at the moment in the content that you're creating, what is that hero piece of content that you're making consistently? And if the answer is there isn't anything, then create something that creates a lot of value and deep connection with your audience or your community that you're building. And if the answer is that you actually have something already, I would think about how you can repurpose that effectively, and is there easy opportunities that you're currently not taking advantage of?
knowing that it could be triggering, can you rewrite the language? Is there a way to put it out with more empathy? And honestly, lean into technology. Like, we have ChatGPT now, or whatever tool you're using. Why don't you put in your tweet or your post or your email and say, hey, like, what's a more empathic lens to this? Can you, generate this for me? And, it doesn't mean that that's your final copy, but it's somewhere to start. And, you can look of what you had created to begin with versus what's recommended. And I think it really, really helps brands, and it's a really good way to start.
Well, probably two quick things. One, I would say start making your GPS framework. I mean, just exactly like I broke it down. Blank piece of paper, have the group at the top, draw a line down the middle, problem, solution. Start fleshing those out. I do this practice for every single thing that I ever build. It's a great starting point, and it helps you throughout the entire process so you can stay focused on whatever platform you want to build. Now, the second piece would be if you're looking to get started with this type of stuff, there's a couple of different platforms out there that I do recommend. Bubble.io is one of the biggest ones. You can sign up for a free account. You don't have to pay a dime until you actually are ready to launch the platform. They have over 1,000 templates that can get you started that have 90% of it already built for you. So that's a really, really mature, awesome platform. Another one that I also recommend and I work a lot more in is called Adalo, A-D-A-L-O. Another one you can sign up for free. They have not as many templates, but they have more experts and different things that, people can help you with. Just start playing around with them, start signing up for those things. The first app that I tried to build, I built it in about 30 different platforms before I found one that I liked. So there's all kinds of ones out there. You can use your best friend ChatGPT to find more, but those are the two that I really recommend. So I would get started with those things.
Oh, whatever they're into as far as self-expression, go do that. If you like to write. If you like to draw. If you like to do pottery. That stuff's so important. And it's, to me, I know it's easy to say this when you're older. It's at least as important as your job, and it'll make you better at your work because you'll be able to connect dots in ways that other people might not be able to. You'll be maybe more embodied, more in yourself, more aware of yourself, more loving of yourself as you do the other work. So I think that stuff's super, super important to express in a format, in a way that brings you to life.
Well, I think that the most important thing is to understand what the goals of the participants is, what those goals are. If you can help them achieve those goals through that conversation, then you've done your work, you've done your job. So keeping that as your North Star will allow you to be more fluid and to not, necessarily break out the conversation, let it happen, let them express themselves a lot better. And then let those insights happen, which was really interesting. Like Laure was saying, listening to them speak is when you really get the nuggets, the gold nuggets. So keeping that in mind, what it is that they are trying to accomplish, what are their problems, their pain points, and you're just trying to help them in some way through this conversation.
Yeah, I love that. I love setting your North Star because it will allow those gray spaces to happen, because that's where the gold is. That's where the real nuggets are. That's where the real insights belong. They don't really belong in the structure and the over framing that we might be tempted to do because we're trying to get a job done. They're found in those gray spaces. So setting your North Star, so essential. And Laure, just kind of coming back to you, we're coming into land now as far as the episode's concerned. But from your 3 or 5, maybe it was, so you've got know your script, being prepared to pivot, and finding the reroute by having those prompts, those things that you need to hold on to as a facilitator. What do you think your top takeaway is? What do you think people need to really hold on to once they finish listening to this episode?
I guess following up on what David mentioned with the North Star, I'd say be prepared to pivot. Because it's in the unexpected that the gold happens usually. Sometimes not, but it's fine. If you're at ease with the unexpected because you've got that North Star, you've got that script really nailed, then yeah, nothing can go wrong really.
I think just telling your story is a really good start, because you'll get more comfortable in your own skin doing that, because you'll feel like, oh, this is my story, this is what makes me tick, and then people get to know you and go, Joe, that's very, that resonates with me. Once you do that, you can build in these other things because they trust you. Selling yourself is not just about doing that to get work. I think that's the problem. If it's too cold to be like, well, I'll just sell myself, I'll get work. You will get work, but the point is you might also make some really good friends or good connections. I don't know. I've got loads of friends that I've made because of like LinkedIn that I've never even met. And I just think that the more you do this kind of framework, it's great because people will go, right, I know that person. I know what they're about. I know what they're bringing to the table. I know what value they're bringing. And then also like, you know, and then they might just then go, what? Tell me more about your services. But I guarantee if you sell yourself like this, people will just come to you anyway. So you won't have to sell anything.
Well, number one, ask for what you want. Okay. Whether it comes to referrals or, a date, whatever it is that you're looking for in life, you've got to ask more often to get what you want. Most people are in their own heads. They're so concerned about what the other person is going to think of them that they talk themselves out of opportunities. And so number one, be brave, be courageous, ask for what it is that you want. The worst thing that somebody can say is no. And you already have that result before you've even started. So you've literally lost nothing. So number one, ask. You see, my mentor here has a book called Ask. And literally that's the game changer. The more you ask, the more action you take, the more results that you will make. As far as how people can find me, if you go to brandonbarnum.com, you'll find all my links, and there's some great tools there as well.
Okay, so it's going to be a 10-day run. And we practice this within our org, and I say this to a lot of people. For 10 days, every single day, make a solid piece of content that you are happy with. You genuinely believe is good, whether it's for yourself and your own social pages or your brand's page. And this can be on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you want to post it. Get a piece of content and distribute it out. If it's a short form video, post it on every single one of those platforms I just mentioned and just watch what happens. Because eventually you're going to start to see that once you have a sample size of 10, and if they're all different styles or they have different identities or tones or backgrounds, or you're in different outfits every time, what you'll start to see is that some of those are going to perform better than others. Every time you post something in the algorithm, you have a chance. It's like the lottery every single time. Make 10 pieces of content, one a day, spend 30 minutes on it, spend an hour, however much time you can allocate to this. Post each one every day back to back at the same time, whether it's 3 p.m., anytime that works for you, 3 p.m., 5 p.m., maybe when you're off work at 6, 7, 8. Post it every day at the same time and watch which ones succeed better than the others. Don't try to get 1 million views. Don't try to get 100,000 views. It doesn't matter if you don't. Even if you get 100 on one and 300 on the next, that next video performed 3x better than that first. Get a sample size of 10, post them all, keep the foundation of posting the same, where you're posting and at what time, and then measure them against each other, and then see of the 10, which one worked best for you.
So my first inclination is that I would really recommend for every listener to think through, what is the next thing that I need to communicate with someone that is important, and how can I make it a picture instead? Or how could I create a smart picture around just that next thing? For example, my word of the year, I created a word of the year, honor. I actually created a model for it that has 3 lines like a triangle. It's put together as a triangle, and it has self and boundaries and containers. So I've created in my own mind a visual of my word of the year, right? So I can actually see it and support it. I encourage your listeners, whatever your next thing is that you're wanting to promote, you're wanting to persuade, you're wanting to captivate, get people to say yes to, think about before you send it out, where can I put a smart picture that would represent these words instead? Just start thinking in cocktail napkin ways, and then you can ask for where's that next person that can help me. But just start working with it right now.
For me, it's around the intent, like really getting clear on which of these three is the one that you need to focus on most, and creating an intention around that so you can make small improvements. We'll know that just that 1% improvement every single time can make an astronomically different outcome overall. It doesn't have to be about focusing on all three. However, particularly if you're talking about in a team meeting context. However, if you are going to the effort of bringing your team together, then the more you can do around being intentional, the better. So intentionality is probably, I would say, my key takeaway.
I would say the one thing you should do if you have a customer story already, because it's probably in a long form, go just try to turn it into a one sheet. Take that as a starting point. See what the experience is like, kind of in the same way we talked about playing and mucking around with AI. See what it's like to take this bigger piece and turn it into something more concise that has a lot of utility. If you don't have a customer story, then the one thing that you should do today is either, whether you are the sales team or you have a sales team, just tap a leader on the shoulder and say, hey, who do we have who's had a recent win? And get the ball in motion capturing your first story and approach the storytelling from the beginning with this nibble bite snack meal. So depending on which bucket you fall into, there's a quick action point that you can go into.
Create a content calendar. Because again, it's all about having that schedule and making sure that you know when your next blog post is going out. So start planning at least 3 months in advance. When are you going to publish? And then start looking up some topics and planning which topics are going to be published when, so that it's all you have to do is fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I always say to set up a Google Search Console account, because it always surprises me how many people doesn't have that. And there's so much data and gold in there to get for your website to grow it. So if you have to do only one thing, then you have to set up a Google Search Console account. And when you set it up, first of all, it's super easy. You don't need to do anything on your website. You just need to create the account. And then Google will basically tell you everything that's happening for your website on Google. So you can optimize your website to rank for specific terms. You can see what terms do I get impressions for, but no clicks. So I maybe need to focus more on that. And often also when you have exhausted a topical cluster, then in Google Search Console, you will see that new topics within that cluster start to appear, because of course there are new searches every single day. So one thing you have to do is to set up a Google Search Console account.
What I'd say is don't try and overdo it and overthink it right at the start. Going from 0 to 100 in one go is extremely difficult. Instead, focus on building a really strong positioning strategy for yourself. So definitely nail that first phase. And then just pick one social media channel to publish content on multiple times a week, ideally 3 to 5 times a week, and try and publish great content on that platform for 3 to 6 months. Just do that. You can then think about building in other platforms or doing podcasts, PR, building conversion systems. You can think about all of that later down the line. But the important thing right at the start is to get clear on the reputation that you want to build and start taking steps that are manageable to actually achieving it, rather than trying to do everything all in one go, getting overwhelmed and then giving up.
So I think for the audience that are listening that are struggling with copy and maybe don't have the budget to use a copywriter but have been tasked with the copy for their business or the organisation they work for, my first piece of advice would be do a bit of research on the different tools that are available, because there are so many for copy. I've tested a few. My current preference is actually Bard. So other AI is available. But do your research, test them, do some of the free trials and see which work for you, because everybody's different. Everybody likes different interfaces. like I said, go onto YouTube and actually look up some of the videos around how to prompt AI. I can share a few links with you, Dan, if it's helpful, of clips I've watched in the past to help me. And yeah, just do a bit of research on it before you just like dive in and start using it, because if you don't have that copywriting background, you sort of won't know if you're getting good quality out. So do your research first and then just give a few of them a go and see how you find it. I think you've just got to jump in. And then I think for copywriters, I think it's really about just taking a look at if you're a freelance copywriter, taking a look at your business and thinking about how you can pivot and how you can start to be seen more as an editor for those who maybe don't need you to start from the off and from that blank sheet of paper. And also maybe look at other ways you can help people, like giving people advice on how to use AI. You could do training sessions on it, just think about all of the ways that actually you can help by giving your knowledge to people. There are lots of ways you can do that. It's just about opening your mind.
My biggest recommendation, I can give you the tactical steps of what to do. Step number one, go download a Chrome extension called Clio, Kleo, I think is the name. It's free. I think Jake Ward was the one that built it. And it lets you look at your highest performing LinkedIn posts to date. So rather than you having to go through and format them or plug anything in, you can look at all of your high performing LinkedIn posts. Find the top theme or pillar that you talked about historically that's got the most engagement. You'll see it in the data. Like you'll literally see of your top 5 posts, a trend emerge usually of what that is. Take that message and take that post from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and rewrite it with a great hook with the format that we've gone through and post it tomorrow and see how that goes. That was what got me into creating content 4 years ago, was just being relentlessly consistent and not being afraid for people to laugh at me or fail. Find that one pillar content, the hill you would die on, and just find new ways to say that again and again. But just start tomorrow with what you've learned, and you'll find that it gets easier every single time.
The first step is broad targeting. The second step is creative testing. The third is the outcome. The outcome of this is you are training Meta's machine learning algorithm to find your best customers. Over time, your ad account is going to be primed to deliver your ads to the people who are most interested in buying from you right now. So that's the 3-step process. The outcome is training Meta's machine learning algorithm such that you can run your ad account without being on this treadmill of constantly creating new ad groups that like work for 2.5 weeks and then they stop working. It's far less effort on any individual business owner. And secondly, it works far better than the alternative as long as you keep feeding the process with new creative executions.
I would start at the beginning of the scientific method. I would start with the problem, the question that you're trying to solve. People, including myself, can easily get sort of discombobulated and you forget where you are in the process. And maybe you're just trying to pull at any strings you can, whether you're marketing something or creating content or you're creating a business. It's really healthy to breathe, take a step back and think, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to solve for? What's the problem? And then do I have a theory about how to solve that problem? It's going to become clear to you when you can see the problem. And for us, when we started Soundstripe, the problem was twofold. One, music licensing was incredibly complicated and antiquated and still like done with paper and pencil and lawyers. And number two, artists were not making a consistent income. They were, it was either feast or famine. It was a lottery system. The best artists got paid so well, and then everybody else was broke. How do we solve those two
two things. And so that we had a theory, and that theory actually ended up being wrong 3 times until we actually finally made the third try was Soundstripe. The first version was a bad brand. The second version was a bad business model. And then the third version ended up being Soundstripe with the brand, the music, the business model. And all of those things came together because we ran experiments, 1, 2, 3 times. And so I would just urge people to start at the beginning with the problem.
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult one because so many people then will find something that works for them in terms of their hobbies, in terms of the gym, going out for a walk. For me, it's actually slightly different. I've got a different take on it. My biggest getaway is games, computer games and retro games. This sounds, bear with me here, bear with me. So I was brought up on the SNES, I was brought up on the NES, the Mega Drive, the Master System, the Dreamcast, the Game Boys of this world. And I've got a young family, I've got chamber going on, I've got various boards I sit on, etc. Life is very fast-paced all the time. I try and give myself at least 15 minutes every single day to do something that I enjoy. And if that means me putting on a Super Nintendo and playing Zelda, or if that means putting on Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1 and giving myself that 15 minutes to take me back to my childhood, to take me back to things that make me happy, and giving myself the opportunity to breathe. It doesn't always have to be, you have to go to the gym, you have to go for a jog, you have to go for a walk. Yes, that is all great for your mental health, but whatever you love and whatever your passion is, follow something, because that will then support your mindset, which will support you caring, which will then support your strategic direction to ultimately look at connecting, collaborating, and closing.
And I know I kind of hop on this, but that's usually the biggest Achilles heels is people are trying to be too clever. They're trying to overcomplicate it. They're trying to jump on trends and jump on tactics. I think the people I've seen succeed the most with content creation are just keeping it mega simple. And they're just super consistent. They show up every day. They hit the same notes. They differentiate it a little bit. They have fun. And I think you got to love it. Like if you don't really enjoy teaching and like entertaining and like producing and creating, this is going to suck for you, right? Like one thing that happens in this 90 days is you'll learn that you'll never want to build a personal brand, or you'll find a way to fall in love with it. But the way I fell in love with it was unique to me. The way you'll fall in love with producing content daily has to be unique to you. And you don't have to produce content every day forever. It's just like almost like a challenge. Like, can I do it for 90 days consistently? And it's almost like, can I build that muscle so that then that way, I might pull it back to 3 or 4 days a week. Like within that 90 days, what happens is you're compressing energy. If you can put a lot of energy together in 90 days, you'll see your Instagram or TikTok or whatever channel pop off. Like there's no way if you're producing good stuff for 90 days that you're not going to get ignition and some momentum. I've yet to see someone fail at this yet, because 95% of people that start this challenge don't complete it. They get to like day 10 and they're like, I don't have 1,000 followers yet. And they just give up. I think it's just, you got to give it 90 days. You got to give it a solid runway to have success.
It's a great question. I think that the first step is to just be the sponge, is to just absorb both work that you love, things that you've seen, whether they're a campaign. They don't even necessarily need to be a campaign. It could just be some sort of creative idea that you've seen that's out in the world that's being communicated, and maybe just have a bit of a play, linking that back to this framework. So, I mean, one thing you could do is obviously take a look at how the framework's used as you're also going through and looking at work that inspires you or that makes you say, that's really cool. I want to know a bit more about it. Because I think having that curiosity from the get-go
is a massive force multiplier that, makes you want to lean in and do more and lean more and get stuck in. So yeah, I'd say just be curious, like find work that excites you. Take a look at this framework, sort of logic and stress test it for yourself to make sure that it makes sense, and then just have a bit of a play with it. Naturally, like you're not looking for, I got this, I've stolen it, but this phrase that I use that's, write stupid to get to smart. And I recently added this extra like addendum, which is then, and then write simple to get to effect. And I think that in itself, as kind of a maxim, is how you get to a good strategy on a page. And ultimately how you get to good work is like, once you've looked at what interests you and you've kind of seen great work, and then you've sort of understand how these processes and these frameworks operate, it's time to get your hands dirty. And don't let having the right answer get in the way of getting somewhere interesting. And you do that simply by getting started. Iterate, try it, listen to the feedback, have another go, and then polish it up. And then prepare to get dunked on again.
I think probably grab a pen and paper and write out the one thing that you think your clients would say about you that's unique to you. Why do they work with you instead of anybody else? But then follow it up with one thing that your friends or your family would say about you that makes you unique, and see if there's a way that you can create your USP for LinkedIn from the two.
So if you want to understand what's going on, right, the first step is to start to capture the data. And in business, we would think about that as saying, like, in sales, you need to make sure that you're tracking your sales efforts, everything from the first touch to the close, so that you can understand where you're hitting a wall and maybe falling down. In the world of marketing, obviously, it's making sure that you are tracking the events on your website. So for example, making sure you've got a pixel on the website to track people's activity. The great news is so many platforms like Shopify, if you're an e-commerce company, make it simple to do that. But you need to make sure that you're capturing the data. Capture what's important to you. So not just does someone land on this page, not just did someone add this to the cart, but did someone do the action or take the activity that I'm trying to get them to take? So I'm trying to get someone to do something, whatever that is in life. You need to capture the data to determine if that's going well or not. And if you think about that in your personal life, if I'm trying to fix my sleep, the first step is I need to understand how I sleep. I need to capture the data. And once I capture the data, I can say, oh, my issue appears to be that I don't have a problem falling asleep. My issue appears to be that I'm waking up after this amount of time. And I can start to think about, okay, what experiments can I run with myself or with my body to help prevent that from happening? One of my biggest unlocks for myself is to take a sauna before bed. So if I take a nice hot sauna before bed, I calm my nervous system down. I sleep better. How do I know I sleep better? Well, first of all, I can just tell. But second of all, the data is captured in my Oura ring, which shows me that I sleep better. And so it's a really simple example of an experiment that I ran, which is like, if I sauna before bed, do I sleep better? So you can think about the same thing in anything in business. Where's your challenge? What's the challenge you're facing? How do I capture the data to better understand that challenge? And then how do I run experiments to try to solve that problem, right? To try to overcome that challenge.
I would go back to find out what you want to talk about, and then find the overlap between what your audience needs, and then just create. Like, don't wait for the perfect idea to strike you, or obsess over getting every word perfect. Just go out there, post, find the medium that's authentic to you. Like, I post a lot of video because I love talking. As you can tell, I don't shut up. And so for me, I post a lot of video because that's authentic and it flows. Some people like to post stream of thought. Like, find what's authentic to you and then go for it. Like, you don't have to look like anyone else. And that's actually a really good thing. There's no one else like you in the world. So showcase you and you will be delighted by the outcomes.
Look, I think that the simplest things that you could do, like you just mentioned, it's anytime that you see an article that speaks to a problem that you're solving, share it around, and don't be afraid to share content that that is outside of what you've written. I think that a lot of people think that they can only share their own content, or, you know, there's something disingenuous or something that, like, I don't want to steer people in this other direction or away from my own website. But when you're in that early stage, it's actually really valuable. So I think that that's a really, really good starting point, and something that you can quite easily execute today, really.
Get on LinkedIn. Like, if you're not already on LinkedIn and you kind of are still seeing it as like the jobs platform, it's not. LinkedIn is now the new hot platform that is everyone's sleeping on at the moment. But if you hop on and you start to follow, you know, these big creators that are really producing value, I kind of feel like the value that has really been there on like Twitter for the last like decade, before it now like kind of, I would say, evolved, or some may say devolved into X. A lot of that value and a lot of that content, a lot of that more positive side of it has come to LinkedIn. So, you know, X has kind of become this like a battleground of like who's right and who's wrong, and me. But LinkedIn is just all about pure value. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a founder, if you're just trying to, you know, start your personal brand, and if you just want value on like how to live a better life, go to LinkedIn.
I think this is like, it depends on how the person wants to look at this. They may have their own business and want to do things with that business. I think it's really looking at that kind of 4Ds approach, going, you know, how do we define the challenge and the insights better first? And what's that win look like? And then I think from there, you can really start to work either internally or with consultants like us, you know, doing the plan itself. But I think on the other side of it, just going back to that kind of human story about myself, is like, if you're not necessarily looking to do a strategy for a business, but for yourself, I think it's important to actually figure out, first of all, like, what's your motivation for you as a person. They almost run the same framework on yourself, in a sense. Like, you know, like, what's your kind of challenge, insights, win and plan for yourself? And the reason I say this is because I think both work hand in hand. I think if you can do that for yourself, first and foremost, the work you produce later in the business world is significantly better. And I'm saying this from someone who's actually, you know, gone through that environment of like working in one space, because it was like what I got pushed into. And then I came out of it, found my kind of purpose and strategy for me, and then deployed it into work. And that's kind of how I've landed where I am now, doing stuff at Infinitum. You know, I do a bunch of like guest speaking, live workshops, stuff for mobility, you know, and that was completely wasn't planned historically, because I had no headspace, because in, I guess you could say, the wrong niche, and now I'm in the right niche. Yeah. So I'd always advocate, find yourself first, strategy, and deploy that into companies afterwards.
It may feel like it is, you know, broad because everybody's different. Everybody's got a different story. But what we all have in common with each other, below all the social labels and everything, is a sort of inherent uniqueness as a human. We are very unique creatures. Not just because we have a neocortex and other mammals don't, but because of our ability to see the past and the future, the ability to create and tell stories. All of these gifts are there for a reason. And so the starting point that when I'm asked this question, I always say is, what inside of you, what thinking, what influences is blocking you from your gifts? We use fear a lot for that. It's like, oh, I'm afraid. Well, there's a great question that often coaches use, which is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Which is a bit trite, because we all have fear. But it begins with understanding and accepting your own gifts. And you have to see what's blocking you from living those. And it's a self-examination. Maybe a coach or a therapist or somebody can hold up a mirror and help you see it, but it's really up to you. Because I promise everyone this, that once you see that, you'll never see the world the same again. If you get just a little glimpse of your inherent powerfulness, of your inherent goodness, of your inherent worthiness, the way you live will be fundamentally changed. And the rest of it is really about execution once you're there, once you're in that place. And so whatever that looks like for somebody, Dan, whether that's, meditation or prayer or therapy or ayahuasca, it doesn't really matter how people get there. Is get to that center of you and see who you really are, and then remove the obstacles that are preventing the world from experiencing you as you truly are.
Go invest in an essential oil diffuser or a incense burner. Essential oils and incense are great tools for stress relievers, and they have all kinds of, benefits, and, you can look up the benefits online and see, the research behind it that proves that, these scents are good for anxiety. Lavender is one of my favorite scents. So if you're somebody who deals with a lot of anxiety at work, grab an essential oil diffuser, grab lavender essential oils, toss it in there, try it out. What's it going to hurt? What is giving it a shot? If nothing else, at least it smells good, and you don't have to sit in a smelly office.
So think about the value add you can offer. Provided you're building the right lead list and using the right marketing channel or customer acquisition channel, the right value will make the rest of the process more forgiving. You don't have to craft every word immaculately. The right value makes up for poor copy or poor messaging. So just to sum it all up, I would ask the audience to think about the one most salient piece of value they can offer. By the way, you could have 2 or 3 of these. I do, so that way you're not repeating yourself. Just have 2 or 3 different bits of value. So one example I can offer right now is for anyone who has an outbound campaign or strategy or tooling, I'm happy to do a sanity check and audit that. And at the end of the day, what you'll get is a 10 to 20% reply rate. I have yet not to get someone that result doing a 30-minute just quick consultation, looking at what someone's doing. Because there's so many things you actually do need aligned: the list, the messaging, the infrastructure, using AI to swap words out, dozens of email inboxes. It's complex. Our SOP is 200 activities to get started. But anyways, I can give you the most salient 2 or 3 things that you should be doing with your outbound playbook to help enhance it and get you that 10, 20% lift. So think about the value, what's in it for them. And secondly, if you want to take me up on this offer, look me up on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/chmarin, CHMARIN, or you can just look up my name, Chris Marin, and I'm happy to offer up any help I can.
What I would say is a really good thing to do is, if you're going to start using visual thinking in what you do, is to look and say, where are things that you're struggling to get clarity around or struggling to share? Those tend to be really kind of easy areas to start with, because when you start to put your thoughts down on paper visually, it really starts to bring clarity around. It helps you understand it more, helps the people you're explaining it to, helps them understand it more. So I'd say really start there. Take what you struggling to either communicate or gain clarity and just say, if I had to draw this in like a really simple way, how would I do it? And one thing I really always want to stress with this is it's not about how pretty your drawing is. It really doesn't matter. You can see from the example there, super scribbly, super scrolly. Doesn't matter. That's not the point. It's about kind of going through that process of visualizing it. And that also helps you think and look at it from a different perspective.
I think the first place anyone should take action is connecting with your customers. And that could be jumping on a customer success call, listening to sales calls and Gong, participating in a customer community, or actually just setting up a coffee link and connecting with people online, actually incorporating that into your schedule. I probably have anywhere from like 2 to 3 coffee dates each week. I'm constantly talking to customers and people in my industry so that I'm in online communities, just trying to hear, what's top of mind for people. What are people thinking about? What are the things they're working on this year? Because at the end of the day, right, how do I help them be successful and how do I help my customer be successful? Well, we solve problems. And so if I can know what's a problem for them and help them solve it, it's ultimately helpful for my business as well.
To me, what clicked, everything clicked when I understood that everything starts with myself. You know, everything starts with you. If you're in a good shape, you're in good mental place. If you're in good physical shape, everything flows from there. So I would say, like, anybody listening to this, just think about, you know, where are you in the top priorities that you have? Just look at your to-do list for today. Where's that? Where do you fit in there? And that means your physical health, your emotional, you know, your relationships, everything that goes around, not necessarily just the business itself, but everything around. So I would say the takeaway is, like, start with yourself. Yeah, that's it, man. Start with yourself.
I was speaking to someone about females starting up agencies the other day, and I think her question was like, why are there not more women? And I think my number one advice is, don't ask for permission to do something. Like, just do it. Especially for women, I think we believe someone's going to tell us we can do it, rather than just doing it. And I definitely do that too. And so I think from today, like, you just have to stop asking for permission and just do it. Whether that's emailing someone, starting a company, going freelance, like, just do it.
Okay, so in terms of that, get alongside people, of course, but maybe in terms of your thinking, I mentioned at the beginning that there are very few one-way doors in life. They are doors that lead on to many other things. Being on a podcast with yourself, Dan, and realizing that we're more closely connected than we thought. So as you transition, so for example, for me, my life feels like it's gone, wow, there's so many possibilities. I'm still an educator, and I want to own all of those skills that I take, and I want to take those into the next part of my working life. I don't want to say, well, I was a teacher or education this. Actually, what we do, life's too short to just reinvent yourself fully over and over. And in fact, that's not healthy, because that just means we put things in categories that we think, well, not that anymore. No, as we go into the next part, or you go into your next challenge, embrace and take all of the skills, all of the challenges that you've learned through and grown through, and know that actually that is defining the success of the next part.
I'd say head over to voltagecontrol.com/workshop-design-canvas and check out the canvas, download it, experiment with it on something that you've done in the past that you'd like to improve on, or if you've got something coming up that you know you want to make really excellent, then it's really important that you make it as best as you can. It's worth giving it a spin. It will definitely shift the way you approach it. And to your point about freeing you from the creative tension, if you will, I like to think about it as focusing your creativity. You know, the system allows you to shine a flashlight on where the important decisions are, and then you can funnel that creativity into places that really matter, and then you can get more bang for your buck.